After the end of My Chemical Romance's reunion tour that happened between 2022 and 2023, there was more or less about a little over a year of silence from the band until one day on November 11th, 2024, they dropped this post right here that I'm showing you, sporting a brand new band logo with the caption, "If you could be anything, what would you be?" And everybody started losing their minds and everybody went crazy, and this ended up turning into something that I don't think anybody really expected. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the North American leg of the Long Live the Black Parade tour. Spoiler alert, people thought this was going to be a new album. It wasn't. Just as a preface, this video is going to be incomplete by nature, okay? I specifically said the North American leg of the Long Live the Black Parade tour because there's gonna be another leg of the tour that's happening next year. I can't see into the future. I wish I could, but this is just gonna be like a part one, I guess, because I do plan on making another video once the next leg of the tour is over. Also, as another preface, this is not going to be like a definitive lore explained, everything explained kind of video. I don't like to really make those kinds of videos because I'm just a person. I get things wrong. I forget things, okay? And I feel like trying to prop myself up as this, like, I know everything about this. I know everything about what's going on in here. That's just not true, quite frankly. Like I said, the tour's not done. There's gonna be stuff that happens that could completely prove everything I'm about to say wrong. And that's okay. That's just the nature of time and how the world works. So, I just wanted to put that out there, okay? Going back to this, okay? Everybody lost their minds. Everybody thought this was going to be like a new album. The new logo really is what people were kind of like, what about? KCR? What is this? This isn't an M. This isn't an M. What is this? What's going on? Anyways, only one day after this post was made, the band dropped another post, but this time it was a video of, who is this? What? Oh, it's a tour? A tour? Black Parade? What? This doesn't look like the Black Parade. This looks like something completely different. They dropped a tour announcement for a Black Parade themed tour that didn't really look anything like the original Black Parade aesthetic. These people, I've never seen these people before. Who are these people? What's going on? Then they continued to drop more post promoting this tour, and also just some like really ambiguous, I don't want to call them sketches, they're not really sketches, but like just videos of these characters. And wait, hold on, rewind. I have seen that before. I've seen that person before. What? Wait, hold on. There's a lot of things that people are going crazy about, okay? There's a new tour. There's a new lore, I guess, apparently. The Black Parade is back, but, like, what's going on? That was what was going through my head, okay? In one of the various Instagram posts that the band made, there was one in particular that actually gave us a little bit of lore as to what exactly was going on. So I'll read it to you right now. It has been 17 years since the Black Parade was sent to the moat, in all caps. In that time, a great dictator has risen to power, bringing about the concrete age, a glorious time of stability and abundance in the history of drag, with two A's. Two A's, remember that. His grand immortal dictator wishes to celebrate our rich and storied culture, fine foods, and musical entertainments by welcoming you to these great demonstrations of power and resolve, and lending voice and song for the first time in 6,247 days. Their work privilege, ceremoniously reinstated, will be his grand immortal dictator's national band, the Black Parade. Long live drag. Okay, the Black Parade went to prison, and I guess they're back. The comment about 6,247 days, people were quick to figure out that was the last time the band performed as the Black Parade in Mexico. That was their last, like, official, like, Black Parade tour. So yeah, okay. This has more to do with like the band than the actual original album, I guess. Let's go backwards. Let's go back in time a little bit before coming back to this. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? The original run of the Black Parade tour. The Black Parade is the third and definitely most commercially successful and popular album by My Chemical Romance, okay? Even if you don't know anything about My Chemical Romance, okay? You know the Black Parade. You know the Black Parade, you've seen the Black Parade, you've heard Welcome to the Black Parade, you've heard Famous Last Words, you've probably heard Teenagers. This is the most popular album that the band ever made. It made them a bajillion trillion freaking dollars. It went quadruple billion platinum, okay? It was everywhere. It was like the band's magnum opus. The actual story of the album itself is really not that important to the video. I'll go over it really quickly. It's also not a super clear storyline as opposed to maybe like Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. This album basically follows the patient and he's dying from cancer, and it's basically about death, grieving, sadness, acceptance, the afterlife, things like that. Just all the things that come with death. Back in the real world, okay, the band went on an official Black Parade tour, and the layout kind of went like this. Gerard would come out on stage on a gurney playing the patient. The band would begin. They would play the end. Gerard would introduce the band as the Black Parade, not as My Chemical Romance. Okay, the Black Parade is something separate from My Chemical Romance, kind of just like an alter ego, essentially. The band would continue to play through the album in chronological order, and at the very end, they would play their last song, Famous Last Words, or the last song, Famous Last Words, and the stage would be engulfed by flames. They would take a brief intermission, and then they would come back out on stage and play all of the non-Black Parade songs. So at that point in time, it was just Bullets and Three Cheers. They would wear their Three Cheers outfits, and they would play a more casual kind of off-the-cuff set where they would be themselves, essentially, right? Over the course of that tour in particular, the band did experience a lot of burnout and a lot of injury, a lot of sickness. Frank specifically was dealing with some chronic health issues at the time, which led to him being heavily medicated during this time. When he thinks back to this specific time period, he doesn't really remember a lot of it, actually. I know the now late drummer Bob also dealt with some injuries. It was just a very, very fast-paced, very, explosive time for the band, and it did take a toll on their bodies a little bit. And I bring this up because I think it ties in a little bit to, some of the themes of the Long Live tour, which I'll get into later. Anyways, after this era of the band, once the Black Parade was over, the band famously or infamously shifted gears into something a bit more colorful and spirited and straight up rock or pop punk. This was the beginning of the Danger Days era, a still quite polarizing era for the band. Notice how I put this angry emoji here. A lot of people were really angry about this. And listen, this might not make any sense at the moment, but I do promise it ties into everything later. I'm not bringing this up for nothing. The album was kind of a flop. Definitely compared to the Black Parade, it was a flop. This was kind of when a lot of people were like, I think I'm kind of done with MCR, I'm going to talk a little bit about the story of Danger Days, okay? So in the lore of Danger Days, there are three different storylines that kind of happen in this universe. The first one is the plot of the music videos that they shot. The second one is the actual progression of the album, and the third one is the comics. We're not really going to touch the comics here. I'm mostly going to be talking about the music videos because that is mostly where this whole era ties into the Long Live tour. Okay, so in the music videos of this album, we basically follow the 4 Killjoys, okay, which are alter egos of the band, okay? Each member of the band gets respective Killjoy member. The Killjoys are this ragtag bunch of rebels who are living in this post-apocalyptic world of the far distant future in 2019. California. And the world is essentially has been kind of desertified, if you will, because of something called the Helium Wars, which, led to a lot of death and a lot of environmental destruction and blah, blah, blah. From the ashes of the Helium Wars rose the Blind Corporation, just this mega corporation that kind of just has its slimy little fingers in every facet of society now. And yeah, the Killjoys are basically kind of these like rebels who are trying to fight against them. In the actual story of the music videos, there's this girl that they save or find, and the Blind Corporation, and more specifically this bald man, they're trying to get the girl back from them for some reason. I think it's explored upon in the comics. The comics take place after the end of the original story of the Killjoys. Anyways, the Killjoys die in the end. They all die. That's just the general story of it. I do need to bring this up. I specifically mostly want to bring this up because of some of the promo for this album, okay? These exterminate posters, okay? For the promo for Danger Days, they did drop these posters, these like wanted posters of each of the Killjoys with big red X's over their face with exterminate underneath, which basically they were like advertisements or like posters put up by Blind, because they had a bounty out for the Killjoys. But anyways, keep this promo in mind, okay? Because it does come back later. Anyways, after the Danger Days era, the band began working on the Paper Kingdom. The Paper Kingdom. We're gonna talk about the Paper Kingdom. Paper Kingdom is an infamously scrapped project from the band. It was supposed to be their last album, but they very quickly decided to scrap it and just completely break up the band after the fact. The Paper Kingdom was going to be more of a return to the darker aesthetics that the band was more known for. The sound was supposedly going to be more like Radiohead-esque, like more kind of just like rock. The story was going to follow a group of parents who had just lost their children. They died, their kids died. They're in this support group, essentially. The band very quickly decided to scrap the project just because their hearts weren't in it anymore. It is also worth mentioning that the band at this point every member of the band had children, and I think making an album about parents grieving dead children, I can understand why they really wouldn't be like jiving with that at the time. They had finished songs from this album. They had over an hour, I want to say, worth of material that they just ended up scrapping because it didn't really feel complete. It just felt depressed, dark, and not in a way that really, it just felt empty. It just felt empty. That's what Gerard would say, that the whole project just felt pretty empty.
Because of Danger Days not capturing that culture like Black Parade had, it was only natural to retreat back into this really dark thing, Really? And then the record that didn't get made was extremely dark. I know I was bringing in some pretty dark energy. I was facing like mentally a really hard time in my life, and I haven't been that depressed since before I started the band. Wow. I'd hit this point in my life where I was extremely depressed, and it's really obvious why that happened. I mean, I felt very trapped. I went against what was in line with myself as an artist. I completely went against it, and I said, all right, well, I guess my chem is just super dark. Let's do the super dark, because that's what that's what people want. That's what we do well. Like, we're on a train right now. It's going to keep going. And I think there was a part of me personally that was trying to recapture that Black Parade energy instead of doing what I always knew I should have done, is to never try to recapture, to always move forward. And if that means you got to walk away from something, do it.
You've heard the story a million times, I'm sure. The band broke up. They each went their separate ways, yada, yada, yada. Gerard went in a much more colorful, bright direction with his solo stuff, Hesitant Alien, which I do have a whole video about. Speaking of Hesitant Alien, really quickly, I just wanted to give a really quick shout out. If you watch my Hesitant Alien video, I do make a comment about how I wish that I had a Lola plushie, and one of my wonderful viewers, Kit, reached out to me and asked if they could make me a Lola plushie, and they made a Lola washi, and they sent it to me, and I love it so much. I just have to shout this out. This gift is amazing, and it means so much to me. I love them so much, and I'm so happy. Anyways, but yes, watch my Hesitant Alien video if you haven't already. Moving on. Frank did his solo stuff, Ray did, everybody did their own thing for a little bit, and then in 2019, there was the great reunion show of 2019. The band got back together. COVID happened. The Swarm tour got canceled twice. Got pushed back to 2022. Now we're here. Okay. After the Swarm tour, there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not the band was ever really going to do anything again, if this was just a one and done deal, if they were just going to keep doing reunion shows, if there was ever going to be new music or any more new music, because they released the Foundations of Decay in 2022. So a lot of people are just what are we doing? And then of course this shit happens, and then everybody's freaking out even more. What's going on? It was yeah, it's been a time. On this tour, the cities announced for this Long Live the Black Parade tour, we have Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Arlington, East Rutherford, Philadelphia, Toronto, Chicago, Boston, Tampa, and technically sort of kind of Atlanta. They did a set as Shaky Knees, which wasn't like, we'll get to that. I'm including it in the video because I end up talking about it. But anyways, okay, first we have Seattle. So this show I'm gonna kind of use as like a rubric. I'm gonna go really into depth on this particular show, everything that kind of happens, because this show is a really good kind of like template. It lays a good foundation because it's the first show, right? Everything that happens after this show, every show that I talk about after this, I'm just gonna really go over the changes that happen in each show and anything that I find notable. I'm not going to go through every single detail of every single show because that would be very repetitive and really boring to listen to / watch. So this part of the tour is going to be a bit long. Everything after that, I promise, will go by a little bit quicker, but we just have to go through this because there's a lot that needs to be talked about. Okay, so yes, everybody is freaking out. People think that the Paper Kingdom is real and that they're going to release new songs from the Paper Kingdom that were never released before, because in some of the promo there's pieces of paper flying around I'm not kidding, people did say that there's pieces of paper flying around in the promo, and so people think that the Paper Kingdom's real and this and that, and there's theories everywhere, theories galore. Oh my god. Finally, we get to Seattle, right? So before the show starts, of course, people get there 1 billion hours early and they wait in the merch line. I believe all of the merch booths for the show opened at like noon. So people were camping out for this, okay? Because it was revealed that there was going to be a special like limited edition shirt for each city that was like themed to the city. The limited edition merch for Seattle was a My Chemical Romance shirt, but it was like Sub Pop themed. Like the logo was like Sub Pop, which if you don't know is a very popular grunge label from the 90s that started in Seattle. Like it's the label that signed Nirvana, you know, so pretty iconic, pretty important to music. Anyways, what I want to get into is the drag themed merch. Okay, there was like some Three Cheers themed stuff and some regular Black Parade stuff, but there was also a lot of stuff themed towards drag. And the things that caught my eye specifically are these two pieces of merchandise that they announced. Okay, we have a flag and an enamel pin. I think these two pieces of merch actually do tell us a lot about this fictional world of drag, okay? In all of the promo pictures and videos and stuff, it's pretty clear that drag is an authoritarian regime under the control of this guy, the Grand Immortal Dictator. It seems to be a very heavily nationalistic, patriotic type of country, and it kind of seems like it sucks to live in a little bit. It's very gray, it's very dreary, it's very concrete, very brutalist, right? This country is very clearly supposed to be somewhere like in the Eastern Bloc, which is like very, very far Eastern Europe, what used to be the USSR, right? Just given the font that they decided to go with, which later down the line, the name for the font was revealed to be Kiposhka, which very, very clearly inspired by Russian. These two pieces of merch, to me, really hammering a very interesting thing about drag, okay? We have the flag and we have the enamel pin. Let's go over the enamel pin first because this one makes a bit more sense to me, okay? We have, in this enamel pin, we have a deer, a little deer that has been impaled by 2 arrows in like its torso, and it's holding the 3rd arrow in its mouth. And in Kiposhka on the top, it says "Long live drag." This is very clearly supposed to be a piece of like drag, pro-drag, nationalist memorabilia, right? This perseverance of, getting, shot at a couple times and taking the 3rd one in your mouth and, just that sounded wrong. Overcoming all odds and surviving and all of this. It's very, I could see why this would be a piece of pro-drag memorabilia. However, the flag, this just does not make a lot of sense to me. The flag is kind of similar to the enamel pin, except the imagery or like the message that it's trying to convey is very different. The deer is lying on the ground with all 3 arrows impaled into its body, so it's probably dying, with a figurative symbolic 4th arrow just impaling it from the top. And for a second, while I was first kind of going through this video and laying it out, I had a theory that this flag might be like a flag of like some sort of resistance group, which would make sense with the story that ends up being uncovered during the tour. But no, this is a real flag from drag. Like, this is the actual national flag of drag because they show it in the background of the video they posted for the drag national anthem, which I'll get to. Isn't that kind of weird? Isn't that kind of odd? Like, this is almost like if America's national flag was like a bald eagle getting hit by a semi-truck. You know what I mean? It's a very kind of defeatist way of portraying your country, especially when you're selling another piece of memorabilia that portrays something completely different. Down the line, it does fit into this weird kind of mentality that I think the Grand Immortal Dictator really tries to push into its citizens. I couldn't really figure out a place to fit that in, so I'm just fitting it in now, but we'll get back to that later. Anyways, yeah, so the merch booth got revealed. People waited 45,000 years in line to get merch, and then after, the doors open, yay, finally doors open. Upon entering, each person was given a sign. Not really what people were expecting. One side says yeah, and another side says nay. Mine ended up getting a little bent up because I accidentally stepped on it at the show that I went to. But anyways, so yes, one side we have yeah, and another side, or no, this side is nay, the other side is yeah. Double-sided poster that each person was given upon entry. The stage was revealed. Very brutalistic, very Eastern Bloc coded, as probably was expected. Someone pointed out actually that this looks a bit like Lenin's tomb, which I thought was interesting, and I do kind of agree with that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ended up being what their inspo was for the stage design. Anyways, the opening band goes on. There is I want to say like a 20 or 30 minute window between MCR going on. Between the opening band and MCR, the jumbotrons and all the screens start showing various interesting things, most notably these sets of rules. Sometimes they're in English, sometimes they're in Kiposhka, that I'm assuming are from drag themselves. Some of them are kind of weird, some of them are just kind of like they straight up sound threatening. One of my favorite ones was do not throw hair. My other favorite one is having fun is mandatory or something like that. I like that one too. There are also a few advertisements that get shown for this company that gets shown a lot throughout the tour. Then sometimes during this little slideshow, because some of the pictures do change here and there, they show this. Wait a minute. Hey, I've seen that before. I've seen that picture before. Yes, a lot of people were very quick to point out that these pictures for these random people, I don't know who these people are, these random old dudes, look so similar to the Exterminate promo that was happening during the Danger Days tour. And so now people are kind of like, wait, I thought this was a Black Parade tour. why are they showing Danger Days stuff? Obviously, they knew that it looked like Danger Days. There's obviously a reason why it looks like this. Like, they're not stupid, right? That's a little weird. That's a little strange. So closer to the band going on stage, there's this character that shows up on stage who's kind of walking around with this clipboard, and he's kind of like checking things, and a lot of people are like, who the hell is this guy? This is the clerk. He ends up being a very important and integral part of the tour story, so keep that in mind. And then right before the band goes on, this is kind of almost like the cue for the band to go on, because they play it at almost every show, I believe. They play the song Tonight You Belong to Me by Patience and Prudence, and they play the whole little song. Let me read you some of the lyrics, okay? I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me. Although we're apart, you're a part of my heart, and tonight you belong to me. Way down the stream, how sweet it will seem, once more to dream in the moonlight. My honey, I know, with the dawn that you'll be gone, but tonight you belong to me. That's just part of the song. It's a little creepy. That's a bit of a creepy song to play before this show, considering the contents of what's about to come. After that song plays, this is like the cue for the official show to begin, which starts with this little auxiliary band, the Drag National Auxiliary Band, I think is what they're officially called, coming out on a stage and with their little drum, and they march out on stage and they leave a bundle of wheat on the stage. Now, despite Gerard's fascination with wheat in the past, I think for this tour specifically, I do think this is supposed to be another nod to fascism. Back during Mussolini's reign in Italy, he was very big on using wheat as this symbol for self-sufficiency. One thing that fascism does to countries is kind of encloses them in. Fascism closes a country off from the rest of the world. And there's this big harping on self-sufficiency, self-preservation. We don't need to get wheat from, I think they were getting wheat from France at the time. And so Mussolini was very big on using this like imagery of, farmers harvesting wheat because Italy can get its own wheat. We don't need to get wheat from anywhere else. So I do think that is a bit of a nod to that, as I believe other people also agree with. After that, we have this wonderful character who will end up also being very important for the story of this tour. Her name is Marianne. I'll just spoil that now. She comes out on a stage and sings the Drag National Anthem. Over fields that light the fire in our hearts, that burns true. Under wheels of might, we cherish our skies, never blue. Like a baby's fists are broken, then grow strong enough to choose to pick up the sword and strike the heart of doom. We in drag have learned to prosper in the glooms. Over fields we live to die under the gloom. This, I think, ties into what I was talking about earlier with the flag. The Grand Immortal Dictator, I think, is kind of trying to really hammer into his citizens, yeah, your life fucking sucks and everything sucks and the sky is gray and everything is gray and you have to work and work and work and everything sucks. You're poor, oh, that sucks, but it's gonna make you stronger. It makes you stronger. Doing all of this makes you a strong person. You're strong. You're persevering against all odds, against all of this. And that's very telling of the Grand Immortal Dictator, because in all of the promotional videos for this tour, you don't actually see what an everyday average citizen is living like under drag. You're only getting these videos of like the grand opulence and very lush living conditions that, the Grand Immortal Dictator and all of his little aristocrat buddies are living under. They live in these palaces with lots of food and beautiful decor and very expensive clothes, but you guys have to live in suffering because that's just how the world works. And you're very strong for that. You're very strong for that. The band finally comes out. Oh my god, the band. They finally come out, and Gerard looks a bit afraid. He looks a bit scared. He doesn't really look like he wants to be there. This is probably the first time he's ever seen the world since the original Black Parade tour, so makes sense. This is probably the first time he's seen the sky in God knows how long. A little bit of a spoiler, the layout for this tour pretty much mirrors the layout of the original Black Parade tour as far as playing the Black Parade set in its entirety, and then there's an intermission, and then we get what's called the B stage set from My Chemical Romance, not the Black Parade. I am going to really only be going over the Black Parade section of the tour in this video, just because the B stage set list, there are some things that I will mention here and there, but I'm not going to go over every song they play and things like that. I don't really think that's really as important, so I'm just going to be focusing on the drag stuff for this video, okay? They begin with The End, and then they go straight into playing Dead. Next, after that, Gerard introduces himself along with the rest of the Black Parade. And then he also introduces the Grand Immortal Dictator, who looks a little weird, huh? The Grand Immortal Dictator is a mannequin for some reason, not really explained why. Next, they play the next song on the Black Parade, How I Disappear. After this, the clerk comes back out on a stage, and this like kind of eerie, like kind of tone plays, and he hands Gerard this note. Gerard kind of looks at the note, and he's kind of like, he kind of just like crumples it up and kind of throws it and ends up in the crowd. The note says, "Mother doesn't love you anymore." Okay, next they play Sharpest Lives. After this, they wheel a podium onto the stage, and Gerard is kind of forced to stand at this podium and deliver Welcome to the Black Parade. During this song, he's always at this podium, and he kind of delivers it like he's a pastor at like a evangelical church. You know, he's really going in there. After the Black Parade, something really, really crazy happens, okay? And maybe in hindsight, it doesn't really seem that crazy, but in the moment, this was something that nobody really expected to happen, okay? I mentioned the B stage set list earlier, right? Which B stage was this smaller circular stage more towards the center of the ballpark, because every show I believed happened at a baseball stadium, I believe. Most of them did. So yeah, you have the main stage, which is like kind of, you know, to the side, and then in the middle you have B stage. Everybody looks at B stage, right? And what do they see? Oh, there are these 4 people with bags over their heads. They're prisoners. These prisoners are walking up onto stage, and everybody is like, what's happening? I thought this was supposed to be just a Black Parade tour. What's going on? Gerard begins explaining that the audience is about to participate in an election of some sorts. As he says, right now we're going to try an experiment, maybe an experiment, maybe a practice of democracy. When you came in, you got a sign. Yes, you got a sign. One side says yeah, the other says nay. What we're going to do here is have an election. If you would pay attention to the big red round circle in the center, you'll see our 4 candidates for this election. You will get a chance to vote them in or out of office. Seattle, are you ready? Now, who rejects these individuals and does not want to elect them? Say nay. Who would love to elect these individuals? Let's all hear you. All together, yeahs and nays up together at the same time. So people hold up their signs. People hold up their signs, whatever side they want, and they have a vote. All of the prisoners get shot and killed. They die. These little like cardboard cutout looking things of soldiers pop up, and they like shoot, and there's like explosions, and they all die. The prisoners, they all die. Gerard smugly says, "Thank you for participating in democracy, hee hee." And then they very quickly play the next song, I Don't Love You, and House of Wolves. After this, the clerk reappears on stage with yet another note for Gerard. He hands it to him, and Gerard takes a look at it. He mocks the clerk, rips it in front of him, and the clerk smacks the shit out of him and walks away. And then after that, a laugh track plays, and then they play Cancer, and then another laugh track plays during Cancer. I remember specifically a lot of people being really, really kind of upset about this part of the show because it like kind of ruined the experience or something, or it like kind of took people out of like the emotionality of Cancer, because Cancer is a very sad song. This is just one of many little nods that I think the band is trying to make about this whole nostalgia thing in the first place. Playing a laugh track during Cancer is just, I personally loved it, and I thought it was great. From these interactions between Gerard and the clerk, we can tell something very quickly. Gerard does not want to fucking be there. He does not want to perform, and whoever is telling him to do these things, or whoever is sending him these messages via notes, is someone who is his higher up that is giving him cues and telling him what to do. And the clerk is mostly just that, a clerk. He's kind of just this like bureaucratic dude who's just the messenger. He's kind of just there to keep the band, to make sure the band is, you know, going according to plan and nobody goes off the rails. Next comes Mama. I want to rewind just a little bit to earlier in the day of this show. While people were camping out for this show, they heard sound check, okay? Gerard is singing this part, this verse, that sounds like it's supposed to be from Mama, but it's not in Mama. It's this new thing. The band also posted on Instagram this weird picture, this like blurry picture, with the caption, "A dagger, please fetch me a dagger," which is like some of the lyrics that people heard Gerard singing during sound check. So this was like, this is big. This is big. Guys, this is big. What is this? What's going on? What is this supposed to be? It ended up being a new part of Mama. We got a new verse of Mama that they play at every single show. Right before the part where Liza Minnelli sings her part, they kind of go off the book, I guess is what I would want to say. Gerard sings this little extra verse that is very telling of the band's situation. "Hello, how are you? You're looking better. Feeling quite well. I've got a secret. We've got a song. Slim as a sliver, not very long. And if you like it, blow us a kiss. It's nearly started. It goes like this. A dagger, please fetch me a dagger. A tool for my treasonous deeds. A delicate matter. Yes, trust me, a dagger is just what this plan of ours needs. We'll follow the script to the letter, deposit his corpse in the sea. You can't see Berlin with the sun in your eye. To fail is much sadder. Yes, trust me, a dagger is just what this plan of ours needs. Let me be. We walk in the park in the fall. We laugh and we point at them all. With tears in our eyes, we collapse on the crosses, and death be the son of us all. This war is the sum of us all, my dear, and Marianne! And this is when Gerard formally introduces Marianne. This sounds like an assassination plot. Right? This sounds like an assassination plot. Gerard is singing, essentially, I think, about killing the grand immortal dictator with a dagger and fucking throwing his body into the ocean so they can be free. Yes, next, after this, Gerard formally introduces Marianne, who goes and sings the verse that Liza Minnelli sings in the original Black Parade song. Marianne does end up being quite an important character to the story of the tour as well. So her name itself, which has been pointed out by other people online, suggests that she is supposed to be this kind of figurative representation of justice. During the French Revolution, there was this logo almost, or this kind of representation of liberty and equality that took the form of a woman, and her name was Marianne, or she was called Marianne. She was the symbol of freedom, equality, things like that during the French Revolution. It's also kind of pretty obviously noticed that she is blind. When she comes out onto stage, she's guided by this older man who ends up being her father. And of course, there is that saying that justice is blind. And it's interesting having her being presented in this way because it is really ambiguous as to whether or not she's being imprisoned. Her father seems to be pretty well enmeshed with, you know, this administration, and it wouldn't really make sense for her to be imprisoned in the same way that the band is, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. One thing I also want to point out, I personally have been getting into tarot a bit more lately, and one thing that I noticed about Marianne is that she looks very similar, not very similar, but she has a lot of the same kind of color combinations as the Justice Tarot card, which I think is interesting. I think the choice of red obviously is supposed to be symbolic, and the gold. I think in some versions of the tarot or some other pictures I've seen, the Justice cape, it's like green, but in this picture it looks kind of golden, so I don't know. But one thing that I think is very interesting is that in this tarot card, Justice is holding A sword, a dagger. Very interesting, very interesting. I think that was purposefully done. Maybe that's just my delusion, but I think they know. I think they know. During this section of Mama, Gerard does also bring out this ventriloquist dummy doll thing. Down the line, he does end up informally introducing this doll as the gentleman. Gerard seems to have quite a fixation and almost this like parental instinct towards the gentleman, which becomes more and more apparent as the tour progresses. The gentleman does have a place in all of this, so I did have to mention that now. After Mama is Sleep. They play an extended introduction to Sleep. In all of these extended intros, Gerard on the Jumbotron is shown sitting and reading something, and he reads something different at every show. At this show, he is reading Murder Magazine. Murder Magazine. Where have I seen that before? Oh, Danger Days. That's another nod to Danger Days. Why does it feel like this tour weirdly has more to do with Danger Days than it does the original Black Parade? That's kind of strange, right? Like, that's a little weird. It is also worth mentioning that the visuals on the Jumbotrons, on the screens during this part, show this missile being launched in this very desert landscape, which is interesting because drag doesn't really seem to be anywhere near a desert. So it's interesting that they chose like a desert specifically for this part of the show. I don't know. I'm seeing the crosses between Danger Days, okay? I'm seeing it. They're making connections in my brain, okay? Gerard is forced to put back on his jacket, which he did take off earlier in the show. He is kind of coerced into putting it back on even though he doesn't want to have it on. And then they play teenagers. And this part is very interesting because it's the only part of the show where the members of the band are not being filmed like on screen. Instead, they show these really crazy, weird visuals, which I will get a little bit more into at the next show. I don't want to top load you guys with too much information right now, so I'm trying to, I want to layer this well. Next is Disenchanted. Before Disenchanted plays, there's this broadcast, this like a news broadcast that's shown of this guy, and he says this: "Our time has come, the button pressed, and a simple act has meaning. A single word repeats across the stars and in our hearts. Greatness. There comes a time where we all must ask, what cost too high? What loss too great? To scroll our names in sand or chisel them in concrete. Good night, my friends. Good night to all." It kind of seems like drag may be instigating some sort of international conflict of some sort that might most likely will lead to the country's demise. And I think also that missile that we had seen earlier probably has something to do with that. It seems like a war is about to begin, or the echoes of one is starting to be felt within the country. Next comes Famous Last Words. And Famous Last Words has a bit of a similar layout as it did in the original Black Parade tour. There's a lot of flames and fire and everything. Then, instead of the show ending, actually, they do a reprise of the end. And during this reprise, the band is kidnapped by drag soldiers, specifically only the other members of the band that are not Gerard. Gerard, he gets stabbed by a clown. By a clown, yes, he gets stabbed by a clown and dies. He crawls into this laid out, like at crime scenes, like the dead person, like the layout of the corpse. He crawls into that almost like this is planned, right? And then he dies. And then after the band is literally kidnapped and Gerard is just dead on stage, the clown, or the Periot, comes out and starts dancing to a recording of Blood. The band does not actually perform Blood, it's just a recording, and the clown is kind of just like da 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 da, yeah. During some of the shows, he answers a phone and talks to somebody on the phone. This talking on the phone is something that ends up being pretty common throughout the tour. And then at the very end, he rips off his shirt and he explodes. He explodes. He dies. The clown explodes and dies. Next, there's this, I believe it's about a 10-minute intermission where they show a deer being decomposed on camera, like a time lapse of a deer decomposing. It's black and white. It's very artsy. It's very cool. Again, with the deer symbolism, very interesting. Maybe hinting at this sort of decay, this internal decay of drag, you know, and maybe the administration is really trying to play it off like things are really, really bad, but hey, no, actually they're not really that bad. You know, I think that's what that's supposed to imply. There's an intermission played by a cellist, very beautiful intermission. After that, the band comes on and performs as the band themselves. They play on B stage, they play a random set list, much akin to the Swarm layout. It's different at every show. That was a lot. That was a lot, right? Am I right, guys? That was quite a bit of information to intake. One thing is very, very abundantly clear. The band they need help. Help! One thing that really stumps me, which I'll get into a little bit later, is why exactly the band was imprisoned in the first place. This really seems to be following more of the actual real life tour lore than like the lore of the actual album that they're performing. In fact, I would argue that the Black Parade really, like as an album, it doesn't really line up with the story of what is being portrayed for the most part, I would say, except for Mama, which I'll get into. But it just makes me think, like, what was the band doing during the original Black Parade tour that they got imprisoned in the first place? So the rest of the shows of this tour generally follow the layout that I just explained to you right now. Very, very similar to the original Black Parade layout, but there are quite a bit of changes that are made between each show, and it does begin this sort of in-tour narrative that we will be going over now. All right, next we have San Francisco. Woo! This is the show that I went to, and I made a vlog about it that you can watch right here on YouTube. Go watch it if you haven't. This is the thumbnail for it. That's me at the show. It was a very fun time. The exclusive shirt for San Francisco, they actually technically had 2 or like 3 because this is a show that 100 Gex opened for, and it was this picture right here like means so much to me. I just have to point that out. If I had seen this image in like 2019, I would have literally had to be sent into like a mental hospital because of how insane this would have made me. Yeah, so they're holding, if you see Frank right here, he's holding this shirt. I pooped my pants at the My Chemical Romance and 100 Gex show. There was another 100 Gex MCR shirt, she 100 on my Gex or something like that. Yes, and then the actual like themed shirt for this show it was like an Alcatraz themed shirt. I don't think I'm gonna point out the other shirts unless they really like stand out to me. For the actual show itself, a lot of people, myself included, did not know what was going to happen because we had just seen what happened in Seattle, and everybody was kind of like, well, are they going to do the exact same thing at every show? Like, it has to be different, right? Or like, well, what's the narrative, or like, what's going on? Are they just going to straight up do the exact same progression of events at every single show, or is there going to be some sort of, is every show going to be different? That was what a lot of people were thinking, wondering. This show ended up only being slightly different than the Seattle show. One of the biggest things for me that I noticed immediately is that Gerard comes out on stage. When he comes out on stage, he has like these like scars on his face, these like scratches almost like across his cheek. That was one of the most immediate things. Anyways, during the Sharpest Lives part where they hand Gerard a note and then he crumples it up and throws it into the crowd, the note says, "Mother wants you disciplined." Okay, back with the mother theme. The biggest difference in this show from the last show is Gerard clears up the confusion about the election that happened. So now we're going to decide the fate of these people. Well, let me tell you their crimes. First, you got to hear this. They dared to question the longevity of our most beloved and handsome Grand Immortal Dictator. Can you believe that? Such a handsome man should never have to deal with these things. This show is also where the Grand Immortal Dictator was still a mannequin, so it was kind of funny like panning over to like this like mannequin, and Gerard saying that. He basically clears it up, saying that, oh, there was a mix-up last time. This isn't an election, it's an execution. Like, we're executing people. Sorry. Gerard says that the lives of these 4 prisoners depend on the vote from the audience. So, of course, this is where they hold up the yay or nay signs. A lot of people put up the nay sign because they don't want them to get killed, and Gerard's kind of like, okay, well, then I guess we're not going to kill them. let's just move on now. But before that, before he's able to move on, he gets a call from the phone, on that little red phone. He picks it up, and this is what he says when he answers, okay? Hello? Oh, you know, stuff. Yeah, next week she's gonna be 78. Yeah, she likes, unintelligible, she likes hand creams and puzzles. Yeah, okay. Well, all right, I'll see you then, bye. He kind of just like blows everything that he set off, and they just end up killing all the prisoners anyways. Again, theme with the motherhood. Something's going on there. Something's happening. Gerard once again gets slapped by the clerk during that little segment, and then he is forced to read an advertisement for Scolando, which is one of the like sponsors for the tour. He reads off of a piece of paper an ad for this brand, and then they get right into cancer, and then the laugh track happens again during cancer, which I found very amusing. So now, since this show wasn't that much different than the last one, this is kind of the part where I want to delve a little bit deeper into the visuals for teenagers. They're really interesting to me. They're very, very interesting. A lot of the visuals have the same aesthetic as a lot of the pre-show advertisements. Given how like old school these ads are, and how all of the technology that they use in this tour is very like Cold War era, very like 60s, I want to say like 50s, 60s. It almost feels like that's kind of just like the era that drag is stuck in, you know what I mean? It's almost like the rest of the world has kind of like moved on and like progressed forward with technology, but this country is like still very stuck in like that 60s, 70s maybe era of like technology. The visuals during teenagers, they're like a few different things that are kind of just like spliced together, like footage of different things. A lot of these are segments from this show Quizzo, which we get a little bit more of a look into for the announcement that they made for the UK show. Essentially, it seems just like this old school like game show akin to something like Wheel of Fortune, you know. They pick which country is going to have their next nuclear winter. As a quick little aside, I really, really like these visuals. They're very like Hesitant Alien coded. They remind me of the Pink Station Zero interview that he did for Hesitant Alien. Just like the very like old school, like glowy kind of like style. I don't know. It just feels very like Hesitant Alien to me, some of these parts. And also just like how awkward it all is, you know, because there was like this very awkwardness of Hesitant Alien that I really, really liked, and these like little segments have that same just like weird awkwardness to them. There's one with a man and a dog. There's one with an older man, one with a woman in a ball gown dancing, like with a man in a suit and like this ball. And then there's 2 people in full black coverage, like body suits, like morph suits, doing just like really weird, crazy, like interpretive dance with like a ribbon, like a red ribbon. The morph suit dancers, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. The black and the red has to mean something. Like that has to mean, that, and symbolically it has to mean something, but I don't know what. I think they're supposed to be tied in like symbolically with like the woman in the ball gown and the man in the suit dancing together. I don't know, like I feel like I'm on the verge of figuring it out, but I just don't have like maybe the knowledge that I need. I just feel like it means something. But anyways, Quizzo, going back to Quizzo, I don't really know what the actual show itself is. I'm picking up on just like general game show vibes. I'm assuming this is like some sort of state sanctioned show, maybe just to like lift the spirits of the people of drag after coming home from a long day at the wheat picking factory or something. I don't know, I guess maybe in a way it's supposed to like hammer in this idea that this tour is just like this big propaganda circus that's going around to different countries, and they're like, yeah, drag is so awesome, drag is so cool, the Grand Immortal Dictator is so awesome, wouldn't it be great if he was your dictator? Wouldn't it be awesome if he ruled your country? Wouldn't that be pretty cool? The book that Gerard reads before sleep, again, is another copy of Murder Magazine. The rest of the show is more or less the same. That concludes San Francisco. Again, if you want to see my little vlog, I have it up on my channel. Yeah. All right. Okay, next we have California, LA, night 1. There were 2 nights for LA, of course. There's always something special for LA, of course. Every time, there's always something special for Los Angeles. Something important here to note, going forward from this point on, take away 1 show, the Grand Immortal Dictator is now suddenly played by a real actor, like a real man. He's no longer a mannequin, which begs the question why he was a mannequin in the first place for 2 shows. I'm gonna assume that it has something to do with the availability of the actor who was playing him. It's a pretty big commitment to go on this like giant tour with this band, you know, especially if you're an actor who probably has other gigs that you're trying to do. So I'm gonna assume like the reason why they just went with a mannequin was because of that. Maybe they just couldn't get the actor for the first 2 shows because he had other priorities or something. Yeah, I'm not gonna look too hard into the lore implications of that because I don't really think there's that much there. I guess it could be like a commentary on how maybe the Grand Immortal Dictator isn't like all he's cracked up to be and he's just a puppet for somebody else that's doing all the work behind the scenes, you know, as per usual in a lot of politics, right? They hand out hot dogs and eat hot dogs at this show. I have here written in my notes, Frank and Mikey have a challengers moment. Gerard reads this like warning to the audience. I'm just going to read through it really quickly. Includes but is not limited to depictions of harrowing circumstances, expressions of finality, all and matters of a corporeal and judicial nature. Individuals of a sensitive disposition or anyone with known medical conditions that may be exacerbated by sensory stimulation or emotionally intense content are strongly encouraged to exercise discretion. Attendance and continued presence shall be construed and acknowledged of this notice and acceptance of all prior discomfort, emotional or otherwise. No liability is assumed for distress incurred by proximity, audibility, or line of sight. All persons are reminded to remain within designated viewing areas, to refrain from physical interference, and follow instructions of authorized personnel at all times. Gerard eats a hot dog.
I would try it myself. It's good, yes.
And then he goes on to the prisoner segment. This is the part of the show, of the performance of the Black Parade, where it's either an election or an execution, but I've started to call it the execution. Individuals who've committed heinous crimes. What crimes, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. They dared question the longevity of the Grand Immortal Dictator. We can't have that. We can't have that at all. And then they do the vote. They do the yay or nay. Looks split to me, guys. Grand Immortal Dictator, what do you think? And then it goes to the Grand Immortal Dictator, and then he's just like, kill him. He just kind of puts his hand up, and they kill them all. So yes, this is where the term execution is coined, and I quite like it, so that's what I'm going to be calling it from here on out. Before he can answer, the clerk hands Gerard a folder containing the headshot of the Grand Immortal Dictator, and Gerard is basically like advertising the Grand Immortal Dictator, kind of like he's an actor, and I'm assuming that's because they're in Hollywood, and it's kind of like a joke, maybe just like a LA joke, but this actually is kind of interesting to me. He reads out his special skills, which include horseback riding. Obviously, like, this is like just supposed to be like a Hollywood joke, like ha ha ha, but I think it is telling of the nature of the Grand Immortal Dictator. He's really played off to be this like really charming, charismatic, like super likable guy, and I think the fact that they're making Gerard like basically advertise him as if he's like an actor, I think is part of like the plan that the Grand Immortal Dictator has to kind of get cozied up with, you know, these other countries, with these other people, to, you know, maybe eventually like take over and expand his empire. You know, he seems to use charm and charisma and his general hotness to his advantage. The material that Gerard Gerard reads during the sleep segment is a science fiction book called The Day They H-Bombed Los Angeles. It's a sci-fi horror novel, essentially, where LA is nuked. The population of the city transforms into these like Fallout-esque like mutated monsters, and it basically follows these people who are trying to survive. Los Angeles, night 2. All right. The note thrown during Sharpest Lives reads, "A horse on a silver tail on a high hill," which is a reference to a Lithuanian riddle that has a few different iterations but only one answer: a bell in a tower. This is also where the band formally announces that they are the official sponsors of a Dodger dogs, which I didn't know what Dodger dogs were until I started writing for this video. Apparently they're really good hot dogs that they sell at the Dodger Stadium. And they're like really big. Honestly, I'm looking at a picture of it right now and they look pretty dang good. I'm not gonna lie. The execution this time around was condiment themed, ketchup or mustard. At this show, during the slapping segment from the clerk, Gerard is actually kind of starting to fight back a little bit, which is interesting. He blocks count two slaps from the clerk before finally getting slapped, and then, everything kind of progresses as per usual. This, I think, is kind of the beginning of where we can see Gerard specifically kind of start to, I think, figure out kind of what's going on, because it's pretty obvious that at this point in time, there is some sort of mind washing or memory wiping or, spoilers, potentially cloning that is happening, that is causing Gerard to forget about everything that happened before this show. That seems to be kind of like not working as much, and it seems to almost be working less and less as the tour progresses, because we kind of see Gerard become more unhinged and a little bit more brave, I guess, in his stands that he takes against the Grand Immortal Dictator. During the sleep segment, Gerard reads to the gentleman as if he's like his child, and he reads the gentleman a book on toy trains. Next, we have Arlington, Texas. Whoa! The Grand Immortal Dictator is wearing a cowboy hat. The note thrown during Sharpest Lives reads, "You are in the city of Dallas, Texas." Again, this is probably another nod of the sort of like reconditioning or memory wiping that they're putting Gerard through. They have to remind him of like just basic things about where he is or like what he's doing. The execution this time around is played out a bit differently than the last one. After the whole, like, we're gonna hold on the execution, blah, 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 everybody hold up your signs. After all of that, they shoot all the prisoners, except one of them actually survives, one of them lives, one of them gets up and is like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on? Everybody's like confused and Gerard is confused. So Gerard says, wait, hold on. One of them didn't get hit. One of our guys missed. We should have got somebody from Dallas to do it. Which is a nod at the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which happened in Dallas, Texas. All right, well, let's show her what she's won then. It's a brand new 2009 Baruva Dart, which is like a convertible type of car. Gets great mileage and looks pretty sweet. What's in it? A brand new goat in the back seat. They kind of just like do like a Price is Right style, like kind of like, oh my god, you survived, you just won a new car, hey, congratulations. Some people link the fact that Gerard listed the year of the car to potentially where this whole storyline might be taking place, 2009, which conveniently could maybe place this whole storyline in between the Black Parade and the events of Danger Days. 2009 was between, right before Danger Days happened and like after the Black Parade. So some people think that that could be some sort of confirmation that this whole timeline situation takes place between these two eras. And furthermore, all of the talk of like H-bombs and like all of the missile imagery and stuff could hint at the fact that not the fact, but it could hint at the potential reality or the potential truth that this is taking place right before the Helium Wars, and drag started the Helium Wars. But yeah, so one of the prisoners lived and they just kind of like chauffeur her away. I'm assuming maybe to kill her like off stage, I guess. I don't know. The book that Gerard is reading this time during sleep is a Peterson Field Guide to Insects. This could be a nod towards the bug imagery for the Swarm Tour, potentially. That's a little bit like general, but that's the only thing I can really link it to. After sleep, Gerard tries to delay putting his jacket back on by calling his mom. Again, his mom, calling his mom. Interesting. During the blood segment, the clown or the Perriot puts the gentleman into Gerard's like hands or arms while he's dying. All right, so we're at a little bit of an intermission at this point now. I'm gonna keep the goat up because it's funny. I just want to do like a bit of a wellness check to see how we're all doing here. That's kind of a lot. It's been kind of a lot. This is only the halfway point, honey. Like it gets pretty wild. Obviously, I think now at this point we can kind of put this is all just for nostalgia purposes. We can put that claim to rest for the most part, because this is very, very not just for nostalgia. Like they really could have just redone the Black Parade and just called it a fucking day, but they did all of this, which is crazy. This, I think, to me, feels a little bit reminiscent of their first When We Were Young Fest show, where they were dressed like where they did like old people like makeup, like special effects makeup, and they were wearing their like old revenge outfits as like super geriatric old men. As kind of like this is what you guys want, this is what you're gonna get. Like we're all old and we're gonna be doing the same thing forever and ever. I feel like this kind of teeters on that same territory where it feels almost like, yeah, we'll do a nostalgia tour, yeah, sure, fine, but we're gonna do it our way and we're gonna make it not really a nostalgia tour. And if you're just here to listen to the Black Parade, well, you're gonna be really confused. You're gonna be really confused. As far as I've really been able to notice, this tour really doesn't have almost anything to do with the original story of the Black Parade. Like the only thing that really connects it to the Black Parade is the fact that they're just playing songs off of the Black Parade and that they're in their old outfits, but everything else feels incredibly different. The ending of the Black Parade almost feels like being saved, you know, at the very last minute with famous last words. It has this like happy ending kind of feeling to it almost, and this tour feels so like we just wanted to die, but we can't. But we literally cannot die. We are literally being forced to come back time and time again after being killed. Also, like, is Gerard actually being killed by the end of every show? Like, what's going on there? It feels like so, I don't know, just like dying and like coming back wrong, if that makes sense. And I don't know, maybe that's because I just watched Frankenstein, like the new Frankenstein movie not too long ago, that theme is like just been in my head. But it almost feels like this sort of like we just wanted to die, but we can't, and we keep coming back, and it's making us fucking crazy, and everything feels so crazy right now. So there's a little bit of a split between what people think. I would say kind of a split, sort of. There's two general theories that I've seen going off online about what exactly is happening to the band behind the scenes. The first theory that I personally abide with just a little bit more is that between each show, the band undergoes some sort of like memory wipe. They can't remember anything that happened before what they're doing right now. Especially, I think that's the case with Gerard. The second theory, which I think is starting to gain a lot more popularity considering the way that this tour plays out at the end, is the clone theory. At the end of every show, the band, after they are kidnapped, okay, they are the prisoners that are being put on B stage that are getting executed at every show. So every group of prisoners that we see on B stage is the band from the concert prior to that show. I kind of feel like what's going on is almost like a combination of these two theories. I think both of these theories can be true at once. I think potentially the ones who are being recloned are the other members of the band, and Gerard, for some reason, because he seems to really be at the forefront of this torture that's going on behind the scenes, I think Gerard is the only one who is not being cloned, which would kind of put a little bit of a hole in like the clone theory, because it's like, okay, if Gerard's not being cloned, why are there always 4 prisoners that are getting executed? I don't know. I just think that it's interesting that Gerard is the only member of the band who has these like very visible scratches and bruises and cuts and wounds. He looks very, very sickly and very, very tired. And the rest of the band kind of just looks normal. I feel like maybe the real world implication of that is just that Gerard is probably the only one who would have been down to do that makeup before every single show, and maybe the band just didn't want to do it with him, which I could see that. Either way, like, it does hold a little bit of weight, right? Like, why is it that Gerard is the only one coming out with cuts on his face and punctures and bruises and looks tired and like half dead? It almost feels like this is like specifically torture for Gerard, because the other band members don't really seem to be nearly as psychologically affected by everything going on, except for Gerard, which, I mean, again, kind of just goes like the nature of the band, right? Gerard is the front man, obviously, so maybe it could just be that. That's my personal theory, that he's the only one that isn't being cloned and everybody else is. And he is the one getting his memory wiped, maybe only half wiped, maybe on purpose, potentially, as some sort of weird up punishment that he is specifically going through, and the rest of the band just gets to die and they just get cloned again, you know, like Mickey 17 style, I guess. I don't know, but this is just an intermission. This isn't the end of the video, so I'm going to save the rest of my thoughts for later. It's pretty obvious that there is some sort of significance to motherhood here. The fact that Mama is the one song that they picked to have this whole new section of lyrics, of instrumentation. Of course, we have the phone calls with Mother, we have the notes, you know, alluding to Mother. We have Gerard talking on the phone before the execution in San Francisco, you know, talking about, oh, she's about to be 78. Oh, you know, she likes hand creams and puzzles. Considering Gerard is like pushing 50 at this point, that would more or less put his mother at around that age, like 70s, right? Something is going on with Gerard's mom. Maybe not his real mom, but like, you know, the mom in the story. His relationship to the gentleman also is very paternal, very motherly. It does paint kind of a sad picture as to like what that could imply about Gerard in this universe, and about what maybe he had to go through in prison, or what his life was like before prison, or what, I don't know. It almost seems like Drag is harping on his mother as part of like this torture, right? Like, Mother doesn't love you anymore. And, you know, the clown kind of mocking Gerard and putting the gentleman in his hands after he dies. It just feels like really cruel, and it feels intentional for them to harp so much on this one specific point. All right, next we have New Jersey, East Rutherford, New Jersey to be specific. So at this show specifically, the You Belong to Me song doesn't play before the band goes on. It is replaced by the song 76 Trombones from The Music Man. The Grand Immortal Dictator was eating spaghetti at the show because we are in New Jersey. They eat spaghetti in New Jersey, okay? Something very sweet and very funny happened at this show specifically. The band actually received the key to the city of Belleville. They got him from the mayor himself. And the funny part of this is that they decided to do this during the Black Parade segment of their show, and not like the B stage part of their show. So the band was still very much like in character while they were getting this key. They gifted the mayor a fish, like a fresh fish, and a bundle of wheat. Because of this, the execution ended up happening before the Welcome to the Black Parade song, because usually it happens after. They kind of skip over all of the theatrics, and Gerard just says, let's kill some people, and then they just kill people. So not a whole lot happening for the execution there, and I'm assuming it's because of this addition to the show. For this segment of the slap from the clerk, Gerard kind of like leans into it and like is kind of like ready to accept it, meaning that he is remembering, he remembers. This is the show also where Gerard formally introduces the gentleman as the gentleman. I just didn't want to wait this long to call him the gentleman, because I didn't want to call him the puppet for that long, because then I feel like I'm just talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. And then the segment before sleep, Gerard is reading Scientific American Journal 2025 edition, special edition, Into the Quantum Realm. Yeah, also the Gerard eats spaghetti too. I forgot to mention this. During the blood segment, the clown slash Perriot dumps spaghetti all over Gerard's dead body. Very, very interesting to me, the fixation on food during this tour, which is interesting. I'm just realizing this now, and all for the next shows too. Like, this is something that kind of continues. I don't know, actually. I'm just realizing this right now. Like, there's a weird fixation on food for this specific tour, like a lot of food imagery and usage of food. I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that maybe like drag citizens are like starving. Maybe this fixation on food could be like either drag trying to like cover up the fact that their citizens are starving, so they're like, look, we have hot dogs and spaghetti and this and that, and then we'll see later with other food items. I don't know if that's just like the band being LOLXD so random, or if that actually, like, you know, maybe I'm just being too woke and I'm just looking into this too much. But it is interesting. It is also interesting because Gerard doesn't really seem to want to eat either. I actually don't know. Like, maybe they're starving them in prison and this is like supposed to be some sort of sick kind of punishment, right? Okay, next we have Philadelphia. Okay, just as a quick aside, in my opinion, this show was the best show so far as like the B stage set list, as far as just like everything that happens at the show, just the energy of it. This is like, to me, this was like the peak, okay? This was the best show, hands down. Before this show, okay, people waiting outside of the concert venue noticed the signs, like ripped up signs on the floor that looked a lot like the yay or nay signs that had the same like typography in the Kaposhka, except they were blue and yellow. Instead of yay or nay, they said chicken or fish. Again, that fixation on food is just really interesting to me. So a lot of people were like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? Like, is that going to be the theme for this show? Like, instead of yay or nay, we're getting chicken or fish? That didn't end up being the case for this show. The way that these signs are like ripped, it almost feels like they were planted on purpose. And like, maybe that I'm just getting too conspiracy brained, but I don't know. It's very interesting that they just like, somebody just, oops, just ripped up the sign and just left it outside of the venue, right? Like, I don't know. It feels pretty like intentional that they did that. During Gerard glazing the Grand Immortal Dictator, he kind of off the cuff says, and he doesn't just have a gun to my head. Yeah, he totally isn't holding me hostage, guys. I totally like think that the Grand Immortal Dictator is so awesome. He totally isn't holding me hostage. Yeah, totally. We can see Gerard just becoming more and more unhinged and kind of being a lot more open about his disdain for the Grand Immortal Dictator. During the execution segment, we get one of my favorite moments of all time in history, okay? They start talking about how they are the new sponsors of the Philly cheesesteak. They get Philly cheesesteaks, and then they get what is his face? The big green guy? I'll put it up on the screen right now. Comes up on stage and starts dancing and throwing Philly cheesesteaks into the crowd, okay? And they start eating Philly cheesesteaks and they're having a grand old time. It was just one of the most surreal things to witness on a live stream. Anyways, then at this point, before the execution, Gerard mixes up the chicken and fish signs. He like kind of previews them. He's like, oh, we're gonna do chicken and fish. Oh, that's not what, oh, we're not doing, oh, okay, sorry. So yeah, he says, all right, so let's kill some people. Oh wait, different thing. So when you came in, you got this sign. One says chicken and one says fish, right? No? Oh, wait, hold on. And then pulls out the yay or nay thing. So it's, oh, I don't know why they did that. It was very funny. These people over here, either they're guilty or not. You got to give the people what they want. And what they want is blood. At this point in the tour, a lot of people, myself included, okay, I did do this, during the execution, hold up the yay signs, and they're like, yeah, kill. Yeah, I did do that. I was a little drunk when I did it, okay? I knew what was gonna happen anyways. I just thought it would be funny. But what does that say about our society? What does it say about our society that we view the execution of these innocent people as entertainment, and we're regardless of whether or not we support this establishment or not, we're just so hungry for blood, and we're just so thirsty for violence. What does that say about our society? At this show, Marianne's story is a little bit expanded upon, and Gerard mentions that she was brought by her father to join this band. During the segment for Sleep, Gerard is reading and / playing a Variety Puzzle and Games Special Issue Autumn 2025. The clerk doesn't have to force Gerard to put on the jacket this time. He just puts it on himself, but the clerk decides to give him a little in the booty. All right. Next, we have Toronto. This is where the chicken and fish signs ended up being debuted for real. The grand immortal dictator is a dummy once again at this show. I feel like maybe that just has something to do with the fact that it was in Canada. Maybe the actor couldn't go to Canada for some reason. I don't know, actually. I don't know. But for some reason, the Grand Immortal Dictator is a dummy again. This is the last time that will happen. The clerk is wearing an eye patch. I think this is the one of the things that kind of caught a lot of people onto the idea that the clerk is most likely also being imprisoned in the same or similar way as the band, and maybe he's really only just like a step above the band, really, as far as like his power or like what he's allowed to do. He seems like a prisoner as well, but just with slightly more freedoms. The note during Sharpest Lives, this is one of the more lore heavy ones, okay? It reads, "Congratulations, you have completed your second operation of the Moat MCR work release program time card system. If this feels familiar, like you've done it before, trust us, you haven't." The execution was pretty silly considering it the chicken and fish theme. Gerard says, "All right, now comes the time when you came in, you got a sign. One side says chicken, the other says fish. What we're gonna decide right now is what is better, chicken or fish. Who fucking knows? Who fucking cares? They're gonna die anyways. I swear, I promise you, one of these sides, chicken or fish, will save their lives." I think that these are kind of like the two clashing kind of identities that Gerard is experiencing within his psyche, which is something that I'll get into a little bit more. The reading material before this show was the Anne Hathaway edition of Vogue magazine from 2025. Apparently, in this magazine, Anne Hathaway's interview, she's talking about a role that she plays in this movie, Mother Mary, this upcoming movie that she's in, I guess, which is about a pop star that ends her tour early due to an emotional crisis. During the jacket putting on segment, Gerard tries to use the gentleman as like an emotional plea to like keep his jacket off, but the clerk this time is much more aggressive and insists on Gerard putting his jacket on. I'm assuming this has to do with the fact that the clerk probably got injured, potentially a whole eye removed, maybe as like punishment for maybe not having kept Gerard in line as much at the past shows. Next, we have Chicago. The note thrown into the crowd before Sharpest Lives reads, "This is not a threat. You will not think of it as such." Also, Gerard threw candy bracelets into the crowd with Kaposhka sharpied on to the beads that read, "We are stuck. Please help." It is also kind of sweet to think about too, because for this tour, it was like kind of like a thing where people made like little friendship bracelets to like pass around or like trade with people. And I think it's kind of sweet that that this was something that they kind of came up with just like off the cuff, and Gerard was like, there's people are handing out bracelets, like that's so cool, I want to make my own bracelets. So he made like he went to the craft store and got his own beads to make his own little fun lore tied Kaposhka bracelets. I think that's quite sweet and very cute. But very not cute considering the messages that are on them. One thing that was interesting about this show is that the venue had a much more strict policy on signage, so not everybody got yay or nay signs. I think the people in the pit were the only ones that were allowed to have yay or nay signs. I guess that was just like a potential like fire hazard or safety hazard. I don't know. The venue was apparently very strict about that. So Gerard says, "What's your favorite color? Red or black?" Okay, it doesn't actually matter. What we're gonna do is vote if these people over here on this thing live or die. Why? Because the dictator says I gotta do this. Do I care? Not really. Kind of sucks that not everybody could get a yay or nay sign at this show. That's kind of sad. When the clerk delivers a note to Gerard, their conversation is audible at this point. Gerard says, "Why do I feel like I've done this before? And why do I feel like I haven't?" The clerk seems pretty pissed off and he says, "Just take this and read it." Gerard rips the note and he gets slapped. Gerard refuses to put on the jacket this time, and it ensues a tickle war where the clerk and Gerard tickle each other. After he's forced to wear the jacket, Frank can be seen paying Ray after seemingly losing a bet. I haven't really been speaking too much about the other members of the band for this tour because the things that they have been doing have been kind of very like small little details. They're not doing what Gerard's doing is what I'm saying. So I haven't really been focusing on that, but that does seem interesting to me. The relationship between the rest of the band members and Gerard, it seems kind of awkward, kind of strained. They don't really seem to interact with each other or talk to each other. I don't know if that actually means that the other band members don't like Gerard or if it means maybe they're just not allowed to really interact with each other that much because of like the surveillance that they're under. This also implies that whatever memory wiping or cloning or whatever's going on doesn't really also seem to be working that well on the rest of the band, considering that they placed a bet as to whether or not Gerard would put his jacket on. And during the blood sequence this time, the clown apologizes to the gentleman before placing him down next to Gerard. It's interesting the kind of weird hold that the gentleman has in this universe and what he's really supposed to be symbolic of. Is he supposed to be like a real person? Do they view him as a real person? Is everybody just going stir crazy and everybody just kind of collectively believes that this thing is, this puppet is real or that he's like a sentient person? I don't know. Okay, so we have Boston. Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't think or come up with anything else for Boston. I couldn't think of anything funny. So I just put up a Dunkin' Donuts ad. Okay, I'm sorry. During this show, there's a second clerk that's kind of like shadowing the main clerk. Hey guys. Editing Hannah here. It wouldn't be a Funny Bunny video without me interjecting my own video because I forgot to add something and I completely gloss over this section when I shouldn't have. So I just mentioned that there is this shadow clerk that is overlooking the main clerk. I forgot to add the very important detail that this clerk guy is actually the main clerk dude that we see a lot in the promo for the Long Live tour. He seems to be a bit of a caliber above the clerk we've come to know and love on this tour. I make a statement later on about how he doesn't appear in the actual tour, but he appears in the promo. That is completely false. That is not true. Putting my conspiracy theory hat on, this guy seems to be pretty like in charge of a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. There is a part in the LA show where he shows up and he's kind of like ominous in like an office or like a dark room and he's kind of just like looking or he's like writing stuff down. He's like watching, he seems to be, I don't know, he seems to like know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like in my opinion, if I'm going off of my idea that the Grand Immortal Dictator is just like this puppet, for this administration, and that the real work is being done behind the scenes, I think this guy is the guy that is doing the work behind the scenes. Yeah, anyways, okay. Thanks, bye. Marianne is nowhere to be found for this show. The out-of-universe reason is that the person who plays Marianne, the singer, she apparently had other obligations for something in Europe that I guess she had to do, so they replaced her for this tour, or for this show, I mean. They replaced her with this woman, Sylvia, who seems to be a little bit more evil than Marianne. She just has more evil vibes. I don't know if it's because of her eye patch, but I don't know. The band also seems to arrive late, and they are literally seen punching into their shift, essentially. Like, they're using punch cards. So this part is strange. During this segment, the segment before the note delivery before Sharpest Lives, Gerard and the clerk have this weird glitching moment where they kind of like just glitch back and forth to each other, stuck in this like weird loop. But then Frank steps in and like breaks it up and pulls Gerard away and like kind of tells the clerk to like, hey, back off, bud, back off, back away. The note that gets thrown into the crowd this time reads, "Welcome to your first day at work. Here are some helpful tips to get you started. 1, listen. 2, no popcorn." Bro, I would get fired. I would get killed. Me, no popcorn. One thing you should know about me, random aside, is I am a popcorn addict. That would be horrendous. Sounds like a terrible situation for me. This time, the yay or nay sign colors were inverted. So Whoever got the inverted yay or nay signs, kind of a rare piece of merch since it only happened at this one show. Also the chicken and fish signs too, actually. During the execution sequence, Gerard says, "These people have committed a heinous crime. They ate all the cake and shared none of it with us." It's how these things go sometimes when the cake is just too good, you understand? I'm gonna have you all put it to a vote, you see. Nay means we don't punish them for eating the cake, and yay means we do. I'm very confused. What I see Yaz in red, Yaz in black? What's happening? Which I don't know. One more time. Red is yeah, black is nay. Okay. One more time. Get them up. Red, no. Let them eat cake, which I think is supposed to be a nod to the French Revolution. This time, before the slap, okay, Mikey seems to interfere with this whole operation. Mikey steps in and stops Gerard from getting slapped, which results in Mikey getting kicked in the balls by the clerk. Gerard afterwards is like trying to like, you know, help him and try to like tell him that, you know, like thank you, but Mikey's kind of just like, no. And he walks away and Gerard looks sad. And it's sad. That's your brother. No. During Mama, the gentleman speaks directly to the audience for the first time. And like Gerard's kind of just like puppeting him. He counts in Sylvia's part for Mama, which is Marianne's part. They sing the part the same. It's the same thing. So before sleep, unusual thing, Gerard puts his jacket on. He usually does it after sleep. A little bit of a difference there. He reads from 2 books this time during this segment. The first one he reads is How to Really Motivate People. Okay. And the second thing is a seemingly in-universe book prop titled Gemini Process Manual. This particular segment really scratched a little itch that I have in my brain. I am quite a big fan of astrology. I do follow it, yes, make of that what you will, don't care. So when I saw that this book was called Gemini Protocol, right, is that what it's called? Gemini Process, okay? My brain went like, whoa, a million different directions, okay? I'm gonna assume that the Gemini process is what is happening, what is being, I don't know why I'm doing this, what is being implemented to these prisoners to make them, to either clone them or to either wipe their memory or to do something else. Let's get a little woo-woo, okay? Let's get a little woo-woo, let's get a little crazy. I'm gonna put up something on the screen, okay? This is the astrological wheel. I'm not gonna do anything too in-depth, okay? I'm just showing you just for some fun visuals, okay? Gemini is the 3rd sign in the zodiac. If you look at the zodiac, it's a wheel, right? You start at Aries and you go all the way around to Pisces. Each sign rules a certain house or a certain element or aspect of astrology, aka like the human experience, you know, however you want to look at it. There's a lot of different ways to read into astrology. Gemini rules communication, sibling, short-term travel. It is ruled by the sign Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. I am a bit familiar with Gemini because it's my rising sign, and it's also Gerard Way's rising sign, just so you know. Gemini, to me, is the very essence of communication, okay? Gemini is that back and forth, that ever-changing, you know, because it's an air sign, okay? Very intellectual, very thought-based, right? It to me, Gemini encompasses the fluidity and the back and forth and the ever-changing nature of communication between somebody else, right? That's why, you know, typically, like if you look at like pop astrology, like Gemini has this reputation for being like quote unquote fake. That's because it's just ever changing, it's ever learning. It is the very essence of communication. This quote from starryastrology.com sticks out to me. The dualistic nature of Gemini presents a dichotomy between the conscious and unconscious mind, symbolizing their ability to navigate between the seen and unseen realms of reality. It is this balance of dichotomies that defines Gemini's intellectual dexterity and communicative fluency traits often associated with the sign. The conscious and unconscious thing is what really sticks out to me. To get a better idea on what I'm talking about, I want to also get a little more woo-woo. Each astrological sign has a corresponding major arcana card. A major arcana, those are like the most popular tarot cards, okay? You got like you got the devil, you know, you got the freaking tower, you got the freaking magician, you know, you got what's another really popular one? Oh yeah, the lovers, which is what we're going to talk about right now. Gemini's corresponding tarot card is the Lover's card. The very surface level meaning of it is about love, relationships. That is not completely what the Lover's card is about. If you want to look at it through a more esoteric lens, it actually doesn't have that much outright to do with like relationships. So what does this card mean just beyond its super base level basic interpretation of love? Well, if you want to take a look at the card itself, we have these three figures on the card. Again, Gemini's the third house, okay. Archangel Michael, I believe, is who this is specifically supposed to be in the middle. And then a man and a woman. Obviously, like the biblical reading of this is like Adam and Eve, because you can see the serpent and the tree, and then you can see like the burning tree after. In readings, this card can come up whenever maybe you have to make a choice, whenever you have to choose, okay? You have to make a choice that affects people close to you potentially. It also symbolizes this dualistic nature of male and female, of these dualistic sides of consciousness of one person, right? We, in a very, very generalized way, there's like a masculine and a feminine kind of side of each person, no matter what gender you are, right? And that's a very simplistic way of explaining it, I know, but just for the sake of this video, that's all I'm gonna say. Now, looking at this through a more esoteric lens, okay, this card is the 6th card in the major arcana. It does have a significance. There is a little bit of numerology involved here, I know. Stay with me, okay? In more esoteric practices, okay, 6 is actually a good number, okay? The whole 6 being the number of the devil, that was something that only became popular because of Protestants and evangelical Christians. 6 represents a balance between yourself and the world around you. That's what it could potentially mean, right? We have there's that old saying, as above, so below. As within, as what is out. You are a reflection of the world around you, just as the world is kind of a reflection of you. You know what I mean? This kind of give and take of consciousness, right? This harmony that can happen if you reach a state of, nirvana or whatever you want to call it. Now, what does all this mean? Hannah, why are you talking about this? Stop talking about astrology. This is stupid. Okay, I know. I'm sorry. I think it's good to know the context as to why this specific mind reconditioning is called the Gemini process, okay? A more surface level approach to this would to be yes, this means that they're cloning. The symbol of Gemini is the twins, of course, this dualistic nature, conscious, unconscious, or male, female, masculine, feminine, however you want to say it, however you want to think it, right? So this could be a confirmation that they are being cloned. There's more than one of each member of the band, right? However, after reading into this and reading into the sign and reading into its potential meanings, I think this actually has a bit more to do with this splitting of a personality that is going on. During earlier shows, we see this struggle with Gerard. He knows what's going on. He's trapped in this prison. He's upset. They're probably starving him and they're torturing him, and he wants to get out, right? And then we have this other conscious or unconscious side of Gerard that is being reconditioned, right? So we have this sort of splitting of this personality. We have the Gerard that is trapped inside of himself, aka maybe Get Out style, and then we have the projection of Gerard, that is being shown to the masses, right? And so I think what is happening, the more and more that this reconditioning happens, we're seeing more and more of a split within him, right? And the splitting of memories and the splitting of identity almost, right? I think that's why it's called the Gemini process. I think that's what it is. It could have something to do with cloning, but I think it has more so to do with this kind of building of this unconscious sleeper personality within a person and taking their real self and burying them in their unconscious, right? Memories, taking their memories and burying them within Gerard, essentially, I think is what's going on. Anyways, moving on. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. After this, Gerard and the clerk start yelling, I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really good at each other. During the blood sequence at this show, the clown literally starts puppeteering Gerard's dead body, and he's moving his mouth up and down as he's blood is just pouring out of his mouth. It's kind of freaky, actually. It's kind of scary. Okay, next we have Tampa. This is the last show of the tour, the last quote unquote real show of the tour. There is still one show that I'm going to go over very briefly, but this is like kind of the finale of the stadium tour. At this show, the yay or nay signs are replaced with only yay. So the illusion of choice has been broken completely, and now your vote doesn't matter. Your vote especially doesn't matter anymore. Someone gets a shot of the clerk's checklist at this show, which simply states, now I know where I am. It's also worth mentioning that his arm is in a sling. Seems like he was punished for something. Speaking of punishment, Gerard has been, over the course of this tour has been seen with like bruises and like scratches and wounds and stuff. But at this show specifically, he has 2 punctured holes into his cheek. You see where I'm going with this visual behind me, okay? I think there's like some Jesus wept shit going on behind the scenes. The note this time says, "Welcome to your first day at work." It is your first day, isn't it? The execution this time around was... I'm just going to read this out to you. This is what Gerard says. "Good news, America. We're going to have an election." Is it an election or what is it? I'm not sure. "How are you today? It's very nice to meet you. We are the Black Parade. When you came in, you got these signs. What do they look like?" Whoa, bloodthirsty much. One side says yeah, and the other side says yeah. Huh. "My dear people of Florida, clearly the prisoners do not deserve to die. I mean, clearly, right? But we're going to take a vote. All in favor of executing the prisoners? Yeah. All in favor of sparing the prisoners? Nay." Now, I'm going to bring this up now, okay, before I continue with what he says. The prisoners on stage are brought up, and instead of wearing their typical black on black gear, they are dressed as the Black Parade. Huh. What? The Black Parade? They are wearing the uniforms that the band is wearing, which freaks Gerard out, okay? Now, continuing. "Now, everybody on the count of 3, lift all your signs so I can see them all out. 1, 2, 3. And then everybody raises their signs, but they're all the same. There's no choice, really. And then Gerard points at Frank and is like, "Hey, what about this one? What about this sign?" And Frank is holding up a handmade white little piece of paper that says, "Nope." "Can we count this one? Well, what about the other side?" "Oh, I see. Your grand immortal dictator? Possibly. What say you to maybe sparing these fine individuals, perhaps? Despite maybe we should stick them up one more time." Okay. And then, of course, he basically, they kill the prisoners. To a lot of people, this is confirmation of the clone theory, that all the prisoners that have been getting killed during that sequence at every show have been the members of the band before. For me personally, if I'm sticking with like my half clone, half not clone theory, I think this could potentially just be the Grand Immortal Dictator threatening the band, basically saying like, "Hey, this can be you next if you keep acting up. I'm going to kill you if you keep acting up. I'm going to kill you for real if you keep acting up," which is kind of interesting to me because it's like Gerard gets killed at the end of every show anyways. So, but of course he doesn't remember that. Before cancer, there is a tender moment between the clerk and Gerard. He takes the note without hesitation and they hug each other very somberly and very sadly, like they kind of know what's about to happen next. During sleep, Gerard is reading The Young Acrobat by Horatio Alger Jr., and it is a story about a young orphan boy who runs off to the circus to escape his brutish guardian, only to then become a big star and regain his rightful inheritance. Inside of the book, Gerard finds a postcard from New Jersey and reads it, and he looks very confused and very like, whoa, like his mind is kind of being blown a little bit by whatever's on this card. There could be a couple things that this could be. This could be one of Gerard's past clones kind of writing to him, telling him what's about to happen. This could also be maybe Gerard, just from the past, maybe writing something to do with New Jersey, something that happened at the New Jersey show. During Blood, the clown takes a phone call and he mouths, "I killed them all. I knew you'd be so proud." And at shows before, when he would answer the phone, sometimes he would be upset. I forgot to mention. This time he seems very proud. I think also maybe this is alluding to the fact that the clown is also being held captive and also being forced to kill himself at the end of every show. Anyways, after Gerard gets stabbed, Gerard gets up and starts having this like stab off with the clown. They're chasing each other around the stage and they're having like a stab off until eventually they both kind of give up and Gerard embraces the clown and they both blow up together. And that's it. That was it. That is it for the main tour. That was Long Live the Black Parade main tour. Okay, let's go over the Atlanta show really quickly. They played a set at Shaky Knees. This was kind of like listed as a Long Live show, but it wasn't really, there was no execution because it was at a festival. The logistics of that just wouldn't work. There was no like actual physical B stage. The B stage set list was just performed on the stage, kind of akin to like the original Black Parade tour. Sylvia returns this time for some reason. The Dictator is also there. The Grand Immortal Dictator is also at Shaky Knees, but he's kind of just like off to the side at the stage. The notes discovered say, "Nice to see you again, thanks, again." Interesting. The reading material this time during sleep was The Way of the Samurai. The clown stabs Gerard a few extra times, and Gerard kind of just like crawls off stage before coming out. That's just because they didn't have time for intermission, so they had to just like figure out a way to like, you know, get out of their Black Parade outfits quicker. That was really all that happened. There wasn't a whole lot of lore. It seemed almost like everything kind of reset this time around, like everything kind of just happened like clockwork. That is the end of the tour. For now, there are going to be other shows that are happening next year, including a just recently announced 2026 leg of the North American tour, where they will be playing in different cities. And also, at the time of me filming this, they just announced / just went on sale 2 extra non-long lived shows at the Hollywood Bowl on Halloween next year. One of them I will be attending, so get ready for the vlog from that. So this tour is very much far from being done. This narrative, at least, is far from being done. I believe the next shows they're going to do that are long live are, I think, Mexico City and some Latin America shows. I forget. There are going to be some shows that they perform next year that are not explicitly labeled long live. So it makes me wonder what exactly is going to be happening next year. Very, very interested to see what's going to happen. So like I said, this is like a part 1, okay? There will be a part 2 once there's a good break between shows. I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself here on like my theories and speculating and such. I want to divvy this section up into more or less 3 parts. Firstly, what I think is happening in universe, which I've been going over with you guys. Second, what the whole meaning or message of it is. And third, what I think it can tell us about the future of the band. Okay, we're going to be doing this essay style. This segment is going to be essay style. Okay, I wrote everything down. Look at that. Look at how much I wrote for this. Anyways, part 1, what I think is happening in universe. Going back to the Mexico show that they played back in 2008 at the end of their original Black Parade run, Gerard says at the end of that show, this is the last performance of the Black Parade. Me when I lie. Hold on, I just realized I forgot to change the projector. There we go. I like that image. I already went over the fact that in the announcement for the upcoming Mexico City show, the newscaster talks about how Mexico City was the place of their untimely demise, despite the fact that they were not actually dead. It seemed to be like some sort of strange cover-up was happening. For some reason, the band was kidnapped by whoever, imprisoned, and for some reason they told the public that they had died. Interesting. When they were imprisoned, the concrete age had not started yet. That didn't happen until after the fact, okay? So whatever establishment imprisoned them in the first place was not the Grand Immortal Dictator, but the Grand Immortal Dictator chose to continue to imprison them for some reason. I don't really know. My basic interpretation on why they might have been thrown in prison in the first place, maybe, the band was probably imprisoned maybe for being too woke, I guess. Maybe their original performances of the Black Parade really roused up energy and confidence within the masses that maybe this prior administration, prior to the Grand Immortal Dictator, didn't like. And so they came up with this whole scheme to imprison them to keep the masses from getting too riled up, too revolutionary, right? That's the only reason that I can really think of. As far as like the Grand Immortal Dictator goes, like I said, he seems very privy on making sure that everybody thinks he is likable. He is very obsessed with his image, right? He makes Gerard every time say, oh my God, he's so handsome, he's so amazing, he's so great. This Grand Immortal Dictator, he's so sexy and hot and immortal, and he's such a great ruler, right? It seems to me that the Grand Immortal Dictator rose into power based off of his charm, his likability, and he intends on keeping it that way. And it seems like he's trying to expand his authority to the rest of the world. So next, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the characters, all of the casts of this tour, okay? I firstly want to go over the band. Like I have mentioned, they all seem to have a bit of a weird relationship. They're not really friends, it seems like, or if they are, that maybe their memories have just been wiped so much that they kind of just like forgot that they were friends. That's my guess. Or maybe they've been cloned too many times that they forgot they were friends. Like I had mentioned, it seems like whatever punishment, drag, slash the Grand Immortal Dictator is putting the band through, Gerard himself seems to be getting the brunt of it, okay? You would think that with like how much the reconditioning like isn't working, that they would just try a different method, or maybe they would just try something else completely. I mean, who knows? Maybe this will be explained in the next show. I have no idea. Next, I would like to talk about the clerk. Yes, like I had said before, it seems like the clerk is one of Grand Immortal Dictator's little cronies, probably more of like a low-level goon for the Grand Immortal Dictator. He doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of power outside of his control and like his reach over the band and like telling the band what to do. But other than that, he seems to just be like the kind of middleman in all of this. Of course, he also undergoes physical abuse from drag, obviously, with the eye patch and the arm sling. Whether or not he's also being cloned, if we abide by the clone theory, I don't think he is. There's not really a whole lot of evidence to really suggest that. I guess maybe except for like his clipboard, maybe he could also be getting his memory wiped. Actually, no, I guess that would make sense for him to be getting his memory wiped. But I don't know. I just feel like if he was, I feel like he would also be kind of acting a little bit more unhinged. But he did act a little unhinged towards the end. You know what? No, okay. I think I'm switching my perspective on this. I think him also getting his memory wiped would also make sense. The hug between him and Gerard could potentially signify maybe some sort of past friendship between them. If they were imprisoned together, perhaps maybe there was a friendship between them that might have been strained or destroyed over time through the mental reconditioning. And maybe the clerk just, was better at doing the Grand Immortal Dictator's bidding. And so he's the one who kind of got out of that, and now he's in his little clerk position. And I guess it would also make sense for him to be imprisoned, because all of the people who are technically imprisoned in this tour do not show up in any of the promotional material for the tour, right? The actual band members themselves are not in the promo videos. This version of the clerk, or this specific clerk, this actor, does not show up in the promo. The Periot, the clown, also doesn't show up in the promo. So I'm going to assume that the reason why is because they are all under the same umbrella of being imprisoned, which is why I have a strange feeling about Marianne, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so the clown also is definitely being imprisoned. I just said that. One thing I want to mention while we're on this topic is this. I forgot to talk about this logo right here, okay? Before some of the shows, I forget which shows, I'll put it on the screen right here. This logo appears, and it seems to be the logo of some sort of corporation. But what's interesting is that it's an eye, and the pupil is like a minus sign. Kind of like it feels very reminiscent of Blind, right? It feels very reminiscent of Blind. This whole vibe feels very reminiscent of Blind. And it's interesting that they are the ones manufacturing this bomb vest device, right? So it seems like maybe they made this corporation, perhaps one of the 4 old dudes that are shown in the promo videos, okay, that I had talked about before, could be maybe the CEO of this manufacturing company that is aiding in this whole plan that drag has, I think, for domination over the world, right? He does seem aware of the relationship between the gentleman and Gerard, and he almost seems to like mock it in a way. So there is potentiality for this person to have also been imprisoned at the same time as the band, or around the same time as the band. They got to know each other in prison, they got reconditioned, they forgot, and now it's weird, and now it's awkward. Next, we have Marianne. I love, love, love her costume so much. She seems to be some sort of Nepo baby in this world. Her father looks to be fairly wealthy. Marianne is just his daughter, and she's just kind of getting wrapped up into all of this nonsense. She might not be imprisoned in the traditional sense, like the rest of the band is, but she seems to be tied kind of against her own will to what is going on. She doesn't really seem to have much of a voice. She is the personification of liberty and freedom in this sense. So, she could maybe be an outside party as far as helping the band go through with their plan, because she does kind of have a bit of an in with this crowd, right? So this is going to be where I circle back around a little bit more to the pre-tour YouTube/Instagram videos that were posted. One thing that really stuck out to me after this tour is going back and watching the video opera, which is where we see the four old dudes, right, that I had talked about before. Marianne is not the opera singer in that video, which I didn't realize until watching it again after the fact, that she is not the singer. It's not her, right? Because it's the Grand Immortal Dictator and all of his friends, and they're all sitting in a row, right? And an opera singer comes out to perform for them. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, yeah, it's going to be Marianne, obviously, because she's like the opera singer for this tour. But it's not. It isn't. It's some other woman. And the more that I actually look at it, it seems like this opera singer that it actually ends up in the video, I think it's Sylvia. It looks more like Sylvia than it does Marianne, which is very strange. It's very strange as to why Marianne doesn't show up as in this, in this kind of garb in the promotional videos. And then I look back and I watch the videos and I go, wait a minute, no, wait, hold on. The only other person in this video and in all of the promo video who resembles Marianne is the secretary, hold on, wait, okay, now let's go back even further. Swarm Tour, okay, 2023, I believe this was during the Japan run of shows where he dressed up as the secretary character who looks almost identical as far as like the dress goes to the secretary in the Black Parade, the Long Live the Black Parade videos. That's weird. That would imply a lot of things right there. Now, going through the run of shows that Gerard did in this secretary uniform, they become more and more bloody. The very last show that Gerard does in this costume, they have like a bloodied face and their eyes are whited out. Their eyes are whited out. It almost looks like cataracts, like what happens when you go blind. I am like 99,000% sure that Marianne is the secretary in these videos. It looks to be the same actress, the same hairstyle, same glasses, same everything. And I'm pretty sure that that secretary, that Marianne, is supposed to be who Gerard is dressing up as during this tour. And it would make a lot of sense tying into Marianne's character as far as her imprisonment goes. It seems like, as far as the progression of Gerard's outfits for the Swarm Tour goes, she may have been blinded, okay, on purpose. It seems like she may have dealt with some sort of injury perhaps for seeing something that she wasn't supposed to. That is a bit of a stretch. I have absolutely no grounds to put that on, just besides this like string of theories that I'm putting together, okay? But it would tie in really well to her character. She seems to be somebody who is trapped in this aristocrat society, in this fascist totalitarian country, and she may, when she was younger, have seen or done something that she wasn't supposed to do, and she got put in her place by being made blind. The video Feast also sticks out to me in this way. It's a very strange video. Before the actual tour itself, it seemed pretty random, honestly. It's basically just this really short video of Marianne. I'm going to call her Marianne. Okay, Marianne and her guide dog sitting at a table with all of this food, like it's a giant feast. There's two soldiers, the two Russian twin soldiers are just kind of standing there, kind of looking at each other, like kind of just awkwardly. And the dog is just eating up all the food. And Marianne is just sitting there at this table by herself, just in this awkward kind of dining hall. I feel like that could be like some sort of hint at this like weird isolation and kind of imprisonment that Marianne is being forced to go through. You know what I mean? She doesn't want to be a part of this, but she kind of has to. So I think she is very well in cahoots with the band. And I think the reason why she is being forced to perform alongside the band might have something to do with whatever role her father plays into all of this. Maybe her father owes the Grand Immortal Dictator favors, right? Who knows? Who knows what happened in the background, right? And she could just be doing this because her dad owes a debt, and so she kind of has to just go along with that. Otherwise, maybe they might fuck her up even more. Who knows? Who knows what's going on? That is a very unhinged, kind of semi-crack theory that I have, but I think it would make a lot of sense given the context of everything that we just talked about right now. Next, we have the Grand Immortal Dictator. He has a very stoic, very stone cold exterior, but seems to kind of really lean into this like charisma that he's built for himself through like propaganda. The fact that he is like grand and immortal suggests that there might be something he's doing behind the scenes to keep this youthful appearance, right? What kind of blood sucking is this guy doing in the behind the scenes? We don't know. Maybe he might be a vampire. That wouldn't be out of the question for the lore for MCR at all, actually. That would make a lot of sense. So just as like a bit of a very brief recap as to what I believe is going on in the lore. Drag is a fascist country, obviously, most likely in the Eastern Bloc of the world, ruled over by the Grand Immortal Dictator, okay? Its common people are forced to live in polluted, gloomy environments, working back-breaking, laborious jobs, while he obviously gets to live lavishly, has to do no real work of his own at all, typical of a dictator, right? Maybe for PR or as some kind of weird punishment, the Grand Immortal Dictator allows the Black Parade to return to stage after 17 years for some reason. The band, alongside a few other characters, are undergoing some sort of mental reconditioning that is wiping their memory. They might be getting killed and cloned over and over and over again. The band seems to be hatching a plan to overthrow this Grand Immortal Dictator, and to whether or not we'll see if it happens, we gotta wait. We gotta wait at least another year to really see how this goes. Now, getting out of the lore segment of the video, I want to talk a little bit about why I think they're doing all of this and why they're doing it now. So while the actual show itself does seem to have a little bit of a political charge to it, I don't think it's nearly as heavily political as a lot of people want to make it seem, and that might come as a little bit of a criticism, or that might come off as like a little harsh or something for some people. I just think that given the context of the meta world, the outside world of all of this, I just feel like because of what is happening in the United States right now, I feel like people are kind of really zoning in on the fascism kind of aspect of this tour, when in reality, I think the fascism aspect of it and the authoritarian regime is kind of more so just like a set dressing and a bit of like a way to make the message that they're trying to say, or the meta narrative that they're trying to say, a little bit more interesting, and make it a little bit more, make a little bit more sense, right? I just think, and this is going to be like a little bit of a criticism, okay, to the band and to the people, okay? I just think that if so-and-so, who's president right now, Mr. President of America in 2025, okay, if he was not president right now, and if Kamala had won that presidency, I just don't feel like people would be harping in on the fascism thing as much as they are right now. I just really don't. And I also feel like there were some people that were saying that this tour is a reaction to the Trump administration. And I just don't think that that's fully true, right? Like, if Kamala had won, they wouldn't have done this tour. They would have scrapped it completely and done something else. That just doesn't make any sense logistically, right? Now, I do think that maybe the past Trump administration definitely maybe inspired a little bit of what's going on. And I mean, I'm sure the current one is definitely helping inspire it now. I just think that the fascism is more of a metaphor in this context. And I think it's more of like a way to get this point across that I'm going to go over right now. I don't know. It just feels a little bit like people are kind of patting the backs of the band a little bit too much with this, where it's like, okay, I don't think, even if this is like politically charged, I don't think it's really that revolutionary. Sorry, I don't think they're really doing anything that crazy. I don't think they're doing anything that groundbreaking or revolutionary or like that boundary pushing. That's just my opinion, and I'm not trying to like start shit. I'm not trying to sound mean when I say that. I just don't think their intention was for this to be so overtly interpreted as overtly political. That was just a little bit of a tangent. I just am a little bit bothered by people being so like, oh, they're really sticking it to the man. They're really not. I'm sorry. And that's just what I think. You know, if they really wanted to stick it to the man, they could do a little more, if I'm being honest with you. They could, you know, but that's just me. Going back to the original Black Parade tour, right? I mentioned that it was something that really burnt the band out. I feel like they felt a bit pigeonholed with the Black Parade, right? And I mean, when you make something that iconic, I feel like that's just the nature of it, right? I mean, even to this day, like, there's people who went to this tour just being like, oh yeah, I remember liking that when I was in middle school. Like, oh yeah, let's go see the Black Parade, right? Like, I feel like it was just something that pigeonholed them into this image so hard. And I don't blame them for wanting to completely shift directions, you know? For a while, especially in like the early 2010s post-band breakup, it really did feel like Gerard was done with kind of like that dark emo, quote-unquote emo, gloomy aesthetic, right? He seemed really, really keen on exploring more bright sounds, more pop sounds, art rock, garage rock, you know, stuff like that. He seemed way more interested in expressing himself in that way than ever going back to, you know, the stuff he was doing in the 2000s. So it's interesting that he decided, along with the band, to do this in the first place, right? And I mean, even to bring the band back together in the first place, there is still a big why that really hasn't been explicitly answered. Like, Frank talks a lot about how, like, you know, they got back together at this like cookout, they played together and they were like, wow, this is awesome, we need to keep doing this, you know? I can understand that from like a reunion perspective and a Swarm perspective, kind of, but as far as like the Black Parade goes specifically, this specific era that really seemed to burn the band out, why would they go back to that? And why would they re-explore, or why would they reopen that wound, you know, talking very figuratively here, and put in all this effort into making this when they could very well have just done another Swarm-esque tour and they would have made a bunch of money off of it, right? They could have also just gone the full nostalgia route and had done just straight up the Black Parade again. The members have mentioned before that they would never play together as a band. They would never do anything like this again unless they felt like there was a reason behind it. They're not ones to be like overtly cash grabby, right? I feel like once you reach a certain level of popularity though, like you have to be a little bit of a sellout, right? That's just kind of how capitalism works. People think that this could potentially be like the prelude to the hatching of some sort of fifth album. I am not really sure. I really don't know. I still can't answer that question completely. Nobody can. It's very, 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 very up in the air whether or not we're going to get any new music or anything anytime soon. This whole reunion era has been very messy. This post-reunion era has been quite messy as far as like what exactly the vision is supposed to be, right? When they first reunited back in 2019, there was this very heavy emphasis on occult themes. You know, a lot of the promo videos were occult themed, the merch. There was a lot of ritualistic kind of imagery involved, right? And that seemed to be the case until closer to the time of the actual Swarm tour, which didn't happen until 2022 because of COVID, right? It makes me think something between that period, that COVID period, seems to have really shifted something within the band and what exactly they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it, right? Because with the Swarm tour, there was virtually none of that occult imagery. It had all pretty much shifted towards more like utilitarian, like dystopian, you know, army kind of themes going forward. Since the Swarm tour, it's been very up in the air. I don't know why my hand keeps going here, but I'm just gonna roll with it. It's been very up in the air as to what exactly the band is doing, and again, why they're back together, why they're deciding to reopen again this wound, you know, because for a while it really did seem like, to Gerard specifically, the band was very much like a very heavy weight on him for a while. You know, if we're talking about money, like if we are talking about money here, like I'm sure that if he really wanted to, he could have found other avenues to make a lot of money. You know what I mean? And he's always going to be making those freaking Welcome to the Black Parade royalties, okay? He's going to be making those freaking Helena and I'm Not Okay royalties, okay? Then they did their When We Were Young Fest set last year, which was just the full Black Parade album, front to back basically, and they weren't in their Black Parade uniforms. They kind of just performed as themselves. And then we have this Long Live tour, and then we have some shows for next year that are slated in like Asia that don't have the Long Live theming, but then some, like the Mexico City show does, and then they're doing another tour after that that's just called the Black Parade. It's not Long Live, it's just the Black Parade, and it's like, what's happening, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. There really hasn't been any clear, concise statements made from the band about any of this, really. They're kind of just like working in the shadows at the moment. Speaking of shadows, I'm going to segue into why you've been looking at this for the past God knows how long. This, if you want to take a look, is Carl Jung's model of the psyche. If you are familiar at all with Carl Jung, he was a psychologist, researcher dude. He's pretty famous for his kind of combination of psychology and more like esoteric ways of thinking. Like he was a Gnostic. Anyways, if you've ever heard the word or the term shadow work, it comes from Carl Jung, and it comes from pretty much this model of the psyche. So we'll look at it really quickly with you guys, okay? What's important for this conversation, right, is Carl Jung believed that the self, right, to maintain a good and balanced self, you needed to have a good kind of balance of your shadow and your ego, right? So your ego is, again, part of your persona, kind of what you put out into the world, into the outer world of consciousness, right? Your shadow is what you keep within, away from the consciousness, away from the outer world, in your inner world. This is put very simply, right, in very simple terms. Your shadow self is the part of you that you hide on purpose from either due to shame, embarrassment, or just a lack of maybe understanding or lack of awareness, okay? The thing about the self, right, is that you can't let the ego or the shadow get too big. If either of these things get too big, it gets messy, right? the thing is that if you ignore either of these things, they both have a tendency of kind of bloating themselves. In this context, I want to talk about the shadow, right? If you continue to ignore your shadow, okay, your shadow is going to creep up, out into yourself and out into your outer world, whether you like it or not, okay? It is going to slowly but surely overtake your ego, okay? And this is how we get things, now according to Jung, now this is all very simplistic, like I said, this is how, you know, as far as this graph goes, we get things like anxiety, right? Your shadow, your doubt has become so enlarged and it's become so uncontrolled that it's starting to seep into your everyday life, into your persona, okay? And it's starting to eat it up, and it's not good. It's not good when that happens, right? So when it comes to shadow work, the purpose of shadow work, put very simply, right? Because I know that's a buzzword now that gets thrown around a lot on the internet these days. Shadow work is not just acknowledging the shadow, but working with it and accepting it. You see, you cannot ever fully, completely erase your shadow or your ego. You can never get rid of the two. They're a part of this, you know, kind of ecosystem of your psyche, right? They have to exist. There's no way to get rid of them. If you get rid of either of these, it's bad news, you know? It just doesn't work. That's just not how humans work. You need your ego, you need your shadow, right? So shadow work is working with your shadow. Shadow work is working with your shadow. Okay, moving on. Shadow work is accepting and nurturing in a way these darker aspects of yourself and learning to love them in a way, you know, put in a very woo-woo terms. It's kind of like accepting the things, the darker, maybe more primal, more potentially problematic aspects of yourself, and being aware of them and working with them in order to maintain this balance, right? I think that this Long Live tour is kind of this like weird shadow work in a way. The Black Parade, you know, for the band was this like big stain or like this big weight on them, like I've said before, right? And I think them acknowledging this and taking it head on and reperforming this show the way that they want to, with this new lore, right? With this new aesthetic, with this new way of carrying themselves, with this acknowledgement of like, yes, this was something that made us so incredibly famous and it's what most people know us for, but fuck it, we're gonna put a laugh track on cancer because we want to. That to me is shadow work. It is not ignoring, they're not moving on, you know, they're not just like blatantly trying not to have that be a part of their, you know, legacy. It's inevitable. It's always going to be there. You might as well work with it and make it fun, right? Right? Speaking as somebody who has gone through the trenches, okay, depression, anxiety, just feeling horrible and awful and having to deal with a lot of deep stuff, you know, in my personal life, this whole tour does have this sort of like icky evilness to it, akin to how I felt when I first started kind of doing shadow work, right? Because the thing about shadow work is that it's not like this, wow, this amazing, liberating, happy thing. Like, it feels disgusting. It feels disgusting, and it feels so like kind of regressive in a way to go back or to go into this part of yourself and to really face it head on. It feels gross. That's part of the reason why maybe this reanimation kind of like, you know, dying and coming back wrong theme really like just feels like, it just feels like I could just feel it like within me, that I feel like that is what this tour is supposed to be. I just feel like it is this sort of like regression that I feel like too could also be mirroring a lot of the regression that a lot of people are feeling right now, given the political climate, given like everything that happened during COVID, you know. And it is also worth noting that one of the band's closest friends, Doug, passed away in 2022, which I think a lot of people do downplay a little bit, but I feel like that is something that very heavily impacted the band. That, coupled with COVID, coupled with the world and everything, it's kind of like how can we just move forward so happy and so unhonestly without acknowledging this, without acknowledging how disgusting and regressive everything feels right now? I just feel just this like energy, right, of just this like confrontation of it in the way that they want to do it. And I think that's cool. I think that's really cool, right? I do think the fascism theme plays a role in this as well, because fascism is a very, very strong advocate, fascist thinking, very, very strong advocate for nostalgia. Nostalgia is something that is so steeped within fascism, right? Think about the MAGA movement, right? When it was first starting out in 2016, it was very, very steeped in this nostalgia for an America that was great, right? To kind of kill this expectation once and for all, to kill this, like, remember how awesome we used to be? Remember how great we used to be? Feeling like you're stuck in this shadow of yourself. And instead of just like ignoring it, you face it head on and you say, I'm gonna kill you! I'm gonna kill you! With a knife! I'm gonna stab you! Anyways, we're moving into the last part of the video. The future of the band. Going off of what I just said about the whole nostalgia and trying to kill nostalgia, trying to, do shadow work and stuff like that, my tinfoil hat is being put on at the moment. And I would argue, now I am low-key an MCR5 truther. I'm trying not to get everyone's hopes up, but I do think that something could be coming. Given what I just talked about right now, it feels like this shadow work, it feels kind of like the last, before moving on and doing something else, right? The Black Parade almost feels like a hurdle that the band has to overcome and face before moving on and doing something new, right? That's my optimistic way of looking at it. Some people think that this is going to be like the last performances that the band will ever have. Some people think it'll be the last shows that the band ever has. I can't say for sure. I don't really feel like that's completely true. They did technically perform stuff from the Paper Kingdom on this tour as well. War Beneath the Rain. Also, one thing that does stick out to me is that Gerard did kind of half mention that they were in the studio, that they were in the stew, and he kind of gets nervous and kind of tries to play it off and starts saying robot noises on stage, on B stage.
We got to play a song that we were working on together called War Beneath the Rain. With him. We're not going to play that now, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but just he made me think of that song. Because we're in the studio. I'm a computer. Look at me, I'm a computer man. All right, this is a real deep cut.
That's interesting. I think something is in the works. I do. And even if we do just get more touring, hey, beggars can't be choosers, right? I personally would love to see, like I had mentioned before, I would love to see a new documentary. I would love to see some sort of interview, right? I am getting a little tired of the crypticness of this band. Hey, if you're watching this, please, I would love an amoeba what's in my bag. Please, an amoeba what's in my bag. What is it? A pitchfork over under. Okay? It's been like 6 years, man. I don't know. It's been a really long time since the band has been together now longer than they have been broken up. You know what I mean? So I would love a little bit of like, hey guys, we're MCR and this is what's in my bag. I think that's it. That's it for part 1, guys. Part 1. There will be a part 2 after, we get a nice break between touring. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly did. I certainly enjoyed talking about this. It was a lot of fun. I hope there is more lore to expand upon in the future. But yeah, thank you guys. Bye.